Hello and welcome to the West City Church podcast. If you'd like to get to know us more, find us at westcitychurch.com.au. We really hope that you're encouraged by today's message.
This is the second week in the series of Jesus and the Church, and I have the privilege today of talking about community. I want to read to you from a passage in Acts chapter 20, and then we'll make some comments around that. In Acts chapter 20, Paul has invited the leaders from Ephesus to come and join him where he is in Miletus, and he's heading back to Jerusalem, and ultimately he knows he's going to be captured, and he's not sure whether he's going to live or die, but he really feels he has to go back. And so this is a really sad occasion for everyone. And in Acts chapter 20, 36 to 38, it says, "Then Paul went down on his knees, and all of them kneeling with him and prayed. Then a river of tears, much clinging to Paul, not wanting to let him go. They knew they would never see him again. He had told them quite plainly. The pain cut deep, but then bravely they walked him down to the ship." Have you ever met someone within church community maybe, and you've talked to them and thought, what a beautiful person they are, and then you've heard their story and it shocked you that they were once like they used to be, and in light of how you see them now? I have a friend who was involved in bikie gangs and had an incredibly violent past, incredibly angry young man. And when I talk to him now and I see him, I just want to hug him. We just get on so well. It's almost like I can't imagine his previous life. And I think about that when I think of Paul. I think Paul was actually once upon a time Saul. And I think what an amazing transformation that took place in his life, that he went from persecuting the church to becoming such a friend that we see in this passage of the church, someone so loved. And I think it's obviously a great sign of Jesus' work in his life. But more than that, it's a testament to the community of the church community who embraced him, who welcomed him, who loved and forgave him and accepted him, albeit a bit hesitantly at first. And so I want to just talk for a few moments this morning about how could we be a community where lives are transformed. Obviously, Jesus transforms lives, but we play a part as a community in helping people become who they the best that they could be, to become the new creation that God's intended for them. And the passage that I've been given is a passage in Philippians to maybe talk about some things around community, maybe some broad brush stuff that we can do as a community to and adopt. When it comes to living in community, there's so much we could be talking about. I mean, the subject is very deep, but we don't have time today to go into all the things. So I want to share just maybe a few from this passage, if I can. The passage, as I said, is in Philippians 2, 1-4, and I kind of like to think maybe that Paul experienced some of these things, and when he's talking to the church in Philippi, he's actually saying, hey, here's some things we can do as a community to make church life the beautiful thing it was intended to be. Maybe these are some of the things that he experienced on the way, experienced from the church in Jerusalem. So I'm going to read it to you, and it's from the Message version. It says, "If you've gotten anything at all out of following Christ, if his love has made any difference in your life, if being in a community of the Spirit means anything to you, if you have a heart and if you care, then do me a favor. Agree with each other, love each other, be deep-spirited friends. Don't push your way to the front. Don't sweet talk your way to the top. Put yourself aside and help others get ahead. Don't be obsessed with getting your own advantage. Forget yourself long enough to lend a helping hand." I see maybe there's two parts to those verses that we could look at. The first part is this idea of maybe inward encounter. The thing of like, if following Jesus has done anything for you, if the fellowship of the Spirit, if the love of Jesus has done anything, there's this inward encounter type of thing, and then there's outward community action or community building action. So let's just focus a little bit on this idea of if the love of Jesus, if the fellowship of the Spirit, if following Jesus has done anything, then do this. There's a verse in Isaiah that talks about those that wait upon the Lord. It says, shall renew their strength. They shall mount upon wings like eagles, and they shall run and not be weary. And when I think of that passage, I think of this idea that when we entwine ourselves and sit with Jesus, that we get new perspectives, eagle's perspective, and we get new strength. And I think it's so interesting that a lot of what it means to be in community stems from actually being in community with Jesus, with God. Communion with him leads to us being healthy people, to be in communion with others, if you like. A lot of people maybe see God, though, as kind of like a giant vending machine, and prayer is the currency whereby we get God to give us stuff that we need or we want. But prayer and intimacy with God, sitting with Jesus, isn't about twisting God's arm. It's about preparing to be God's hands and feet. You see, when we sit with God, when we hang out with him, if you like, whatever that may be, in whatever way we do it, that prayer, that waiting upon the Lord forms us. You see, that's the whole point of it. It's to be formed. It's like the fact that we go and be with him and then we come away changed. So it makes sense that we should be people that do it regularly, that we hang out with him regularly, have the inward encounter before we get into the community building action. When was the last time you had that inward encounter? When was the last time you hung out with God? May I suggest, will you do it regularly, daily, maybe even many times in the day, that you reflect, you understand that the invitation from God is actually an invitation for a relationship. Jesus said, when you pray, say, Our Father. What a beautiful thing. A lot of religion is about us doing things to please God, or a God, or whoever that may be. But I love one thing I love about Christian faith is that Jesus comes to us, God comes to us and invites us into relationship, says, come and be with me and be transformed while you're with me. So Paul says, look, if the love of Jesus has done anything in your life, if God's Spirit at work and the fact that he's called you into communion with God, the Spirit and the Father and the Son, if that's done anything, then do these things. And let's just have a look for a few minutes about things we can do. Now we've understood that a lot of our inspiration comes from being with God, being with Jesus and hanging out with him and being changed by him. So what are some of the community building actions that he talks about here? Well, firstly, he says, do me a favor, agree with one another, be deep-spirited friends. I like that. Agree with one another, be deep-spirited friends. And I can hear some of you already thinking, agree with one another, check my brain in at the door, and never have disagreements with people. I don't think that's what he means, because we know Paul disagreed with people in Acts as we read it. We know there was disagreements there. I think what he means, though, is look for what you have in common. Look for what you have in common. Something that really helps us with this is when we actually, with what we've just come from, the fact that the thing that a lot of us have in common is that Jesus has changed our lives. And I would imagine as Paul is, Saul, just post him receiving his sight and being baptized in the Spirit, I'm sure that the early disciples in that church community had to look for what they had in common with Paul to then begin to accept him within their community. Many of them may have had friends and family who had been locked up because of Paul and even maybe killed. So think about how they would have had to say, in order to live in community with you, what do I have in common? And the thing that they probably could always agree they had in common was that Jesus had saved them, that Jesus had taken the broken vessel and started to put it back together. Look, I do think we should be able to disagree with one another, and maybe a short side note on that should be, if we are, we should always maybe attack arguments and never people. That if we are going to disagree, we disagree with arguments. I would say never hold an argument so much that it becomes part of your own personality. Hold things loosely because, hey, there may be times where we look back and we say, I think I need to change my mind. I've heard a good argument from someone else. But if we can have a disposition to say, what do I have in common with you? Not what separates us, but what holds us together. I love it that Church of Christ has this saying, I think it's by Augustine of Hippo. It says, in the essentials, unity. In the non-essentials, liberty. You know, go for it. If it's not essential, let's have liberty around just hanging out with each other, have our different understandings on stuff and our different ideas. And then he goes on to say, but in all things, love. What a beautiful thing. And so he says, get on with each other. Be deep-spirited friends. Look for what you have in common. The second thing is, he says, don't push yourself to the front or sweet talk your way to the top. I just think that's about, if we're going to live in community, let's move from competition to care. Again, is competition bad? No, in lots of senses, competition is great. But I think there is a sense of competition within the church where it's maybe the people that matter most, or we're jostling with one another for priority and prominence and plaudits. And I think those things are not community building actions, they're actually community breaking down actions. My daughter was in a church and as a young woman, and she was on the stage singing, and unfortunately within that context with those young people, what she saw was this sense of like, it was the way you dressed and you know what you could do was made you more important maybe than someone else, and as a result, my daughter's not in church anymore because she said, I can't live with that can't live with the competition of like wearing the right clothes and looking a certain way in order to be accepted. Surely church shouldn't be like that. And before, we all get on our high horse and say, we're not like that. And, there's terrible leaders out there producing terrible churches where competition is, rampant. Let me just say this to you. I'm sure the leaders would be horrified of that church if they knew that was going on. I'm sure they would. And we even see in the book of Acts that, when it came to feeding the widows, certain widows were being overlooked, and the Jewish widows were being fed, and some of the other Greek and, non-Jewish widows were being overlooked. So let's say it could have been a manpower problem. There just wasn't enough boots on the ground to help feed them. But it may have been that it was a favoritism thing. Maybe there was more competition there in regards to who was more favorable than others. Bottom line is, how did the disciples deal with that? They came from a place of care. They moved from competition to care. They said, well, we need to have more people to help serve food to more so that everyone is included. So I think it's really important that if we are to be a community that is built up and welcomes others, that we should come from a place of care and not competition. He goes on to say this. He says, forget yourself long enough to lend a helping hand. I love that. And I feel like, we often talk about love, but love is spelt here Service, service. It says, forget yourself long enough to lend a helping hand. The picture here is that we become people who lift others up rather than using others as stepping stones to get where we want. If anything has shown us out of COVID-19 and this pandemic is that, people who help, we've actually started to go, we admire those people. Those who serve, whether they're paid or not, it doesn't matter. Those that run towards this problem, there's something in us that we are drawn to about that. And I think that's what Paul's saying here. We want to build community, then learn how to serve. Learn how to lend a helping hand. I love the Banksy painting, the drawing he did for that hospital that has a little boy playing, and in the background there's a basket full of superheroes, and he's playing with a nurse doll, zooming it around. And I love that picture of, wouldn't it be amazing for us as a church? We've known this for 2,000 years, that service is at the core of what it means to be in this new community that Jesus has established. Wouldn't it be amazing that even post-COVID, we get involved in so many different community activities that are brilliant. Cheer them on, serve ourselves, and the training ground for service often is within our church community that we then go further afield to do. Just in practical ways, I often think for myself personally, I'd love to share them. What does it mean to say, how could I love in a way that spelt service? And for me, I think there's three things. One, do no harm. You know, like when I'm with people, if I'm trying to, like, let's not make it about me and how I feel. And there is an altruistic thing that happens often when we love and serve others. We feel good, that's good, but let's not make that the motive. Let me not do it to do harm. The second thing is to leave people better than I find them. You know, I think that's the whole nature of service, lifting others up, leaving them better than you find them. And then the third one is to help carry the burden. Sometimes, I mean, we're all called to carry our own responsibilities. But in this passage in Philippians, later on, he says, you know, there are burdens sometimes that are too heavy to carry on your own. And I think something about service says, I'll come alongside and let me carry what is too heavy for you. In closing, I think that's what this common purse is. Each year we take it up, and what we are saying is we're saying, hey, let's pull together our finances so that we can carry the burdens that are too heavy for those in those developing situations overseas, maybe in the community building activities we're involved in. Let's carry some of the weight that they're having to carry on their own, but in ways that do no harm, in ways that ennobles and empowers the locals. And same with here with the local purse and how we redistribute it here. We want to just say in the time when it's so tough and you can't do it on your own, when the bills are mounting up and you feel like you're going to sink, that common purse is there to say, hey, let's just walk with you for a bit. Let's give you a breather. And so I just want to say thank you for your giving around that. This is actually a community building action that we're doing. And I know that this is week 2, but you can jump in and do that right here and right now. A very practical thing that says, you know, I not only want to live in community, but I want to make sure our community is healthy and beautiful. Let's just pray right now, and let's just invite God to just help us. We talked about starting with him. Let's just reflect in him as we close. Lord, there are people who are thinking about joining community. May they hear your invite to be in relationship with you, Father, Son, and Spirit. God, that transforms us. And then, Lord, help us to move beyond that. Never forgetting it, receiving our strength and our source of energy and life from you, and seeing things differently, new perspectives as we wait upon you. But Lord, help us go beyond that to then maybe do some of the stuff that builds community, not even just our community, but the wider community that we live in. Thank you, Jesus, for your example, for your presence, and for your power and your enabling. In Jesus' name, amen.
How good was that message? Thank you so much for joining us. Each week at West City, we say a benediction together. We do this because we believe that the purpose of the church is to be a caring community for the world, and that as we go and serve others, we enter into Christ's work of welcome, restoration, and healing, both for us and others. We believe that in doing so, we get to see and encounter Christ. So let's say the benediction together. We come together as the church to be reminded of the go of Christ. So we will go out and feed the hungry, go out and clothe the naked, go out and fight for justice, go out and end oppression, go out and proclaim anew the old story. Go out and associate with those who don't look like us, think like us, act like us, and don't even like us. And we'll do it all in the name of the one who sent us. His name is Jesus.